Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we'll be reviewing the latest direct drive wheelbase solution from the guys at Simucube. I must say, I've been looking forward to getting this SC2 Pro into the SRG for testing. Now it's time to put it through the SRG's review process and see what this new motor and software combination can do. So, let's get to it. Time for the closer look segment. And we'll take a closer look at the motor itself in just a minute. First, I just want to go through some of the things that it comes with. First off, let's talk about the power supplies. They actually have two of these big brick power supplies. And we'll take a look at one of them here. And these are Meanwell units. Let me go ahead and give you a close-up here if you guys want to get the information off of there. And yes, they are the GST 280A48 for 48 volts. I believe 280 is for the watts, and we also have a designator of a 6CP there, and that's for the plug type, and I'll show you that in a second. But the really important part here, for me anyway, is the 48 volts we see down here on this bottom line. 48 volts at 5.8 amps. Right. So this is a pretty powerful power supply, and I like that they're using Meanwell. Meanwell is the industry standard when it comes to dependable, quiet power supplies. And I actually looked these up, and these things run about $100 or so a piece. And we need two of them. And they have a nice ferrite sink here to try to cut down on the EMI. And that, again, that C6P designation is for this plug. And you can see we have 6 poles on this plug, or 6 things that we're plugging into. Similar to a video card. If you've ever built PCs and put a video card in, you're probably familiar with that configuration. Right, so we have 2 of these, and of course everything is just heavy duty here. The cable's very heavy duty. It's a 16 gauge cable, so it can carry all that power, all those amps. And yeah, we'll go ahead and put this aside, and we have 2 of them. And again, this is about, I only mention this because I've actually been reading the forums. I would say this is about 1 meter long as far as from the power supply itself. So you might have to get your power supplies a little bit closer than you might have thought originally, because some people are complaining, and I don't know if complaining, but it's a concern that, you know, this isn't very long. But the cables that go into this side are pretty long, and we'll look at those next. And these are for North America, which is the 3-pronged 110 volt system. And you get 2 of these cables, obviously the usual connectors on the other side. And yeah, nothing really fancy to see here, and we don't need much fancy to actually carry the power from the wall over to our units over here. And yeah, like I said, these are plenty long. I think these are about 2 meters long, each one of these. Right, so what else we get? We also get a nice USB cable that has ferrite cores on each end of it. I've been using this. This one's not all pretty and rolled up for you to see. And I like that they've actually included USB cables that have ferrite cores on them, again, to help reject any EMI. Even though I really haven't had any issues with my rig in the SRG, yeah, with that kind of problem. But I know some guys have, and yeah, that just helps keep that from happening. Doesn't hurt to have it, for sure. We get an assortment of screws over here, and this obviously is for attaching the quick release system to the wheel that we're going to use on this. We also get this cool thing. This has got to be the coolest e-stop I've ever seen, and this is an aluminum housing that this comes with. And yeah, so we got aluminum housing, but we got a little plastic on the back. But you also can see we have 6-pin connector here, and we have a nice, really thick cable here to connect that. It's got the 6-pin locking connector on each side of this. So again, very cool. Everything is just so heavy duty here. And obviously this is going to be something you want close by. I usually mount this somewhere where I can hit it with my leg or my knee, so that I don't have to reach around a spinning wheel that's gone out of control and try to get to my panic button, I call it, the e-stop. So yeah, it's pretty simple here what this does, and you can see there's actually a black band showing right there between the yellow and the red. If you push this down, that goes away, which also gives us an indication that it is engaged and the motor will be shut down as far as any torque or power being sent to it. And then, I don't know how well you can see this, but there's actually some arrows there. There they are. And you just turn this in a clockwise direction until it pops out. And there you go. Now we're back into the unengaged or disengaged condition, and off we go. Right, so this is also, what's cool about this is a power button over here. See this? So we can just push this, and we can remotely power on and off our wheelbase. Now that is clever. I really like that. And a little blue LED lights up, but we'll see more of this when we get to actually talking about the e-stop, how I'm going to mount it, that kind of thing. And we'll see it in use, obviously. So right, very nicely done here. Again, it just goes with everything in this kit. Everything is really top-notch, very professional looking stuff. Let's look at the quick release. I'm not going to talk about it much, but I'm just going to show you what you get. First, you get this piece, and it is the matching piece to the front piece on the actual motor that has a little groove in it there, right? So this simply attaches to your wheel one way or another, and then you'll just slide it down like that. Once it's slid down, then we can take our pin and put it in one of these holes on the side, either one there or one over here, it doesn't matter, and it will engage this so it will not come off, and it's not loose at all. Actually, I've already used it, and it's very, very, very tight. I didn't see any looseness or play in this connection at all. So very good setup, I think. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. Right, so in this, take it off again, just pull your pin out. Don't lose your pin, by the way. And then it slides right off. So simple enough. We have some actually some machined holes in this right here, so we can actually attach from the other side of a wheel. If you're going through a wheel, you can actually attach to this. But the only thing is, that is not a 70 millimeter pattern. That is a, I believe that's the 50.8 pattern. Yeah. And let me go ahead and verify that with my thingy here. Yep. That's what that is. Okay, so that's a 50.8 millimeter pattern here. So I know a lot of people mostly use the 70 millimeter patterns, but that's why we have this piece here, right? So this actually converts this over to a 70 millimeter pattern. So you can actually attach this through the screws with the 58 or 50.8 millimeter pattern, and then you can attach this to your wheel, right? And then you're ready to go. But it is awful thin, isn't it? Once we put this on there, but even though we do have some pretty good clearance here, it's about, I think it was 70 when I measured this before. Let's see what my clearance is here. Yeah, actually 75. So that's about 75 millimeters of clearance there you have. And yeah, it may or may not be enough to clear your wheel, but remember, we also have to be able to get this pin through here, right? And it's going to sit in there like that without interfering anything on the back of our actual wheel that we're mounting. So that's another consideration. And again, this is not something unusual. You know, there's always some kind of consideration when we're mounting a wheel to a direct drive system. Right, so that's our adapter plate that turns the 50.8 into a 70 millimeter, because that's what's around here. This is a 30 millimeter spacer. So that's 30 millimeters thick. I'm going to use this. Not that I have to use this, but I actually test mounted some stuff, and yeah, I like the reach that it gives me, and it makes a difference. It's not a wheel clearance problem as far as shifters or clutch pedals. It's just a reach thing, right? Just a spacer to give me more reach, which actually worked out pretty well for me. Now this spacer also has the 50 pattern here, and it has a 4 pattern in the middle, and that 4 pattern matches the 4 pattern on this guy. Let's go ahead and pull this pin back out. All right, so that will actually attach to this with no problems, just like that. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll actually, I think we can come back through the back, but we'll look at that when we're actually doing it. But yeah, this gives us a space, and then we can put this against our wheel, and we're good to go, right? And that's actually how I'm going to have my wheel that I'm using set up, okay? And I'm actually using the Asus wireless wheel over here. Ooh, that's nice, huh? And actually, you'll see the review for this before you see the review for the motor. Right, so these are the 3 pieces we have to assemble. But there is a problem here, and it's not a, you know, it is a problem. It is a bit of an oversight, I think. But if you use this spacer, or if you use this, because all of these, go ahead and measure this for you. The outside diameter is 68.8 millimeters. Don't move. There we go. All right. 68.04 actually, not 8. So what that means is our 70 millimeter pattern is going to be interfered with. That's what I was talking about before. And yeah, it's going to limit the depth of the screw that goes on this. Let me get a little better look at it there. You can see it's kind of peeking over the edge of the spacer here. And if we mount a screw back through here like this, then obviously we can only go the depth of this, which is about, what, about 5 mil? It's about 5 mil. Yeah, about 5 millimeters. And yeah, then we run out of space because we're going to hit this. Now we can use, you know, some washers on the other side of the screw or whatever. There's ways to get around this, and it's not that uncommon to have to, you know, do some things that you might not have thought you had to do to mount wheels to our direct drive systems. It's like nothing that unusual. But it is what it is, and until they decide what they might do to fix it, I don't know what they could do, to be honest. They'd have to shave some material off of the spacers, and I just don't know if that's a good idea for the strength of it, because you can see how the holes, countersunk holes are in there. But again, we'll see this later when we look at the quick release parts. All right, so now all that is done, let's take a look at the motor itself. And this is a rather heavy motor. I've got a couple of pictures I'm going to show you here, and one is in pounds. This is 23.5 pounds, 23.5 pounds. Or for the guys over in the world, except for North America, it's 10.670 kilo. So this is a substantial feeling wheel, as you might imagine when you pick it up. And it has a very cool case on it. I like this aluminum separation here. I believe, and we'll find out once we do the look inside, I believe that this part here is where the electronics are going to be housed. And yeah, this part here is the stator of the motor. And of course, we've got the rotor with the magnets attached right here going through it. So I believe that the real motor length is about like this, probably a bit of the shaft of this rotor hanging off the back with some kind of resolver encoder on the back of it. But we'll see that once we pull this off. Now let's take a look at this back. That's where the interesting stuff is happening. And you can see, wow, this is heavy. Okay, so you can see we have two power supply connectors. Those are our 6-pin over there. Over here we have our connector for our e-stop button. This is an accessory type plug where we can actually plug in pedals or button boxes or, you know, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's for something that will be coming out, I'm sure, in the future, because this is going to be, this setup's going to be around a long time, I think. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of people coming out with accessories and things for it. Of course, we have our stop button over here like that. And of course the USB, so we can plug it into the computer. Here we have a plastic window, and this is all metal here, obviously, aluminum maybe. And anyway, that window is for the wireless connection. And there's probably, I'm thinking maybe a little antenna wire on the module inside here too that might be like kind of wrapped around somewhere just to make the reception a little better. I didn't have any problem with the wireless connection, by the way, so whatever it is, it's working. But again, we'll take a little peek there, but I imagine that's why that plastic is in there. Right. And again, everything is like really professionally done here. It's, you know, all you got to do is look at it. I don't know how well this is conveying over video, but yeah, once you have this in hand, even though you see pictures of it, you can tell right away that, yeah, this is a well thought out piece of equipment here. They did a great job over at Granite Devices. I'm really pleased with what they've come out here. Even little details like the flange here. Now, most flanges, or actually all the flanges on the midges, on the Cole Morgans, lenses, whatever I've used in the past, were just straight through holes, and of course you used a bolt and a nut on the back of it. They've actually gone to the effort to put threads in here. These are M8 threads, okay? So yeah, very cool, I must say. So now no more nuts on the back, so we'll have a nice clean install, and we'll see that once I get it installed on my rig, right? So, and again, this is a spring-loaded. We're going to look at this. I'm going to pull this off, and we're going to look inside. Part of the look inside will be that, and also talking about how this quick release and the pin mechanism functions in there. There's actually a little ball bearing, I believe, in here. You're not going to be able to see it here, but once I take it out, we'll get a better look at it once I pop this cap off and see what's in there as far as what's holding this all together. I'm sure it's similar to what we've seen before, some kind of a clamping hub system that clamps onto the front of this rotor shaft. Right. Again, not much else to see here besides that. And we know it's a substantial motor. And I don't know what you guys think. When I first saw this silver stripe here, I was thinking, what is that? You know, but it kind of grows on me. You know, now that I have it in hand, I see what it is. It's just a separator between these two casings. And yeah, I kind of like it. So yeah, that's it for the closer look. What we'll do next is go to the look inside, or maybe I'll do the quick release thing first. I don't know, but we'll do one or the other first, one of those other two segments. And yeah, we'll just get to that. Now for the look inside segment, I've taken the cap off so that we can see what's going on inside of here. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we're talking about the whole quick release system. Right. And First off, you'll notice that there is typical, if you guys have any experience with the servo motors that we use for direct drive, there's always a clamp that clamps onto the rotor shaft here that has the magnets on it and spins inside of the stator on inside of here. And yeah, this is a clamp, the typical ones that we'll see, that as you tighten these 4 bolts down, it squeezes the shaft. And yeah, that's just the way it works. And you can see they have this nice hub on the outside of it. And I'm not sure how this is connected, and I'm really not going to pull this off because it's just it's a common thing. We really don't need to see that. And plus, the most interesting thing is what's around on the rear. And we'll go ahead and spin this around. And I'm going to try to get this to where you guys can see what's going on here best I can, but I think everything is still connected. Oh, by the way, before I do that, this is a 24 millimeter shaft. Just to let you know, the same diameter that is on the Kollmorgens. And I actually measured them to make sure, and sure enough, 24 millimeters, nice thick shaft. I think the midges are like 22. So if you have a Kollmorgen clamp and you want to use that, then you obviously can. If you don't want to use this, or for whatever reasons you need to modify it. Right, back to the rear. Now it's pretty simple to get into this case back here. It's just a couple of M5 bolts back here, or M6 bolts I believe they are. They're 5 millimeter hexes. And I have a 5 millimeter hex around here somewhere. There it is. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this off, just so we can see what's inside. All right, so we'll go ahead and pull these guys out of here. There's one. And I'm going to kind of, it looks like it's kind of springing out while I'm doing this, so I'm just going to let me do it this way so you guys can see what's going on here. It's just a couple of bolts, not that complicated, obviously. And the whole cane comes off, very nice. This should be very easy to work on if we ever need to. Right, I'm going to gently take this out. I'm sure there's some wires in here. And there are, and I'm going to spin this around to try to get it to where you guys can see what's going on here. And remember, this is where our plastic window is, so I'm thinking the Bluetooth receiver transmitter is in that area. So we're going to find out here. Now the wires attached here, I'll give you a look there, they're kind of bent, and that's typical. You'll bend a loop in them as you're putting it in to take up any slack, because you got to have some slack to actually do things with, like, attach wires and things like that. You got to have some kind of slack. Now there's pictures on the internet of this circuit board, and I'm just going to show you that, yeah, it is exactly what we saw on as far as the internet. And of course we have the lugs attached here instead of just soldered on pads that we're attaching our power leads to, and our data leads actually going somewhere else. It's actually going down here from the encoder. It's where you see all these little wires in the bottom here. There we go. You can see a little better that way. Right. Nice big capacitors here. We have a very large 10-watt resistor in there, one of the ceramic deals. Big fat thing. And yeah, not much else to see here, again, that you couldn't see on the internet. Well, on this PCB board, it does have an ARM package chip on it, and of course that's doing all the smart stuff. But what's surprising to me, or not really surprising, because everything, that's the way everything goes eventually, is how much is inside a regular, or I guess we're calling them in the SC1s now, the original Simucube with the Ioni board attached. And here's a picture of that here. How much we've taken all that down, except for the power supply, of course, because we still have the power supplies external. But yeah, all the electronics is now reduced to this. Very, very cool, I think. Yeah. So, and as far as what's going on inside of there, you can see there's the back of the rotor shaft, and it has the encoder on it. I believe that's an encoder, not a resolver. It really doesn't matter either way, whatever they're using it. I'm sure it's the highest resolution you can get. And I know they actually tout that on the new SC2 platform. Very, very high encoder here as far as resolution. So yeah, it's going to grow with anything that the industry can throw at us as far as gaming refresh rates on force feedback and things like that, which is really, I think, still very in its infancy as far as direct drive force feedback is concerned. Right. So not much else to see here, but we can see all this hollow case. I was right when I was thinking that from this aluminum piece back, it's all hollow in here to accept and maintain and be able to hold our electronics. Right. Not much else to see here. It's a pretty quick look inside, rather. And yeah, I'm actually going to do this. On the back of this board, there's another board attached to the back of this plate. And you guys I don't know if you're going to be able to see it here because it's so darn small. There it is. See that little silver square right there on this part of the board? It's not the front part. That's on the back part back here. that is the actual USB, or not USB, Bluetooth transmitter right back in there, right? And again, that is right in front of our little plastic cover there. So that's how it's going. I thought there might be a wire coming off of this little unit here, but I can't see anything, you know, acting as an antenna or something. And I know that they're actually considering maybe putting a stubby antenna on this back plate here to better utilize the reception for the Bluetooth unit. But we'll have to wait and see. In fact, this is what I was thinking they could do. I'll have it handy here. This cool stubby antenna that is on the Asus Racing wireless wheels. So if we have one of these on the back of that, that would be cool, huh? Yeah. Even though I haven't had any glitches or any problems with the reception on this thing when I was using it. So, yeah. But that doesn't mean no one will ever have any problems. Right. So there it is for the look inside. What we're going to do next is get to the quick release, because I want to do a little segment on that just to show us a few different things on it. And then, you know, we're obviously going to attach the quick release to a wheel, and yeah, we'll go down the segments as we progress and get the wheel mounted over to the rig. So what we'll do next is take a close look at that quick release system. So let's talk about how this quick release system actually works. This is the front plate that comes off of the front of the motor that we saw before. And inside of here, I'm going to try to get it so you guys can see. You can see two little, on this side, right here, on this side, you see two little ball bearings in there. I'm trying to get some better light in it so you can see it. But yeah, they're in there. There they are. All right, so we've got two of them actually on one side and on the other side, right? And they're spring-loaded units. On the top here is, you can see these two screws. Each one of these screws on either side is where the ball bearings are, and I believe probably spring-loaded. More than likely there's a spring underneath those screws. And there's also a small grub screw down in the center hole. I'm not exactly sure what that is for, but there might be something in there, you know, mechanical that it's holding or tuning or whatever. But yeah, you shouldn't have to adjust this, I would imagine. But yeah, those spring-loaded balls do this. There is in the pin here that we're going to use to attach, make sure we get some focus here, there is a groove in it, but you see the groove is not centered, right? It's kind of like towards, I don't know, maybe not even a third, maybe a little more than a third up from this handle over here, the knob. Right. So the reason there's two of them in there is once we take this part, and we saw this already in the closer look with the 50.8 millimeter screws, or pattern here of threaded holes, and yeah, we just slide both of these together and they mate like this. Very simple, right? Now, to secure it all, we use the pin. I remember when I first saw the pin on the internet, I'm going, what are you talking about? How can you secure it with a pin? But this notch in here, apparently when you push it in, and it catches, in other words, the ball bearing on this side, this guy, not this one, is going to fall into that groove, like that. Now we've got the attachment, and it is very tight. Yeah, there's no play or wobble at all. It's just like one unit once you do that. So really what those two are in there for, so we can actually take this pin back out and do the same thing on the other side. So it doesn't matter which side we attach it from, we still have a very tight fit. So very, very cool design. I didn't understand it when I just saw pictures of it, but now that I see how it works, yeah, very clever. And it does get a little stiction when you have it connected, and you have to tap the wheel or tap this a little bit to get it to pop off, but it's just a tap. It's not like it's hard or anything, right? So I don't want you guys to get the impression of that. It's very simple and very easy to do, but it just doesn't, when you first grab it, it kind of has a stiction to it, which is a good thing when it comes to a quick release, at least in my book. Right, so that's how it works. Pretty simple, right? Now, again, we talked about the attachment here. I'm going to show you another piece. We already saw, go ahead and put this aside. This piece can go, the 50.8 millimeter pattern around here actually fits the holes that are 50.8 millimeter right here, but we also have on the outer edge a 70 millimeter pattern, okay? And they are threaded. The 50s are not, but they're threaded here, so they don't have to be. And we also have some threaded holes, get you a close-up look, in the center here that match the pattern of this 4-hole pattern in the center here. That's how we attach these things together, okay? Now, this is Well, the thing about this is, and I showed you before, is because of the width or the size of this, of the diameter rather, of these pieces, this piece and the 30 millimeter spacer, it runs some interference on these holes here, these 70 millimeter holes. And I'm going to try to show you guys that one more time here. I'm actually going to line up the 4 holes here with the 4 holes there. And let me see if I can get that to line up. Let's see. You got to turn it a couple of times to find out where that sweet spot is. I'm not sure why it does that or why they made it like that, but yeah, there's only one way this thing goes on really easy, and there it is. Okay, so then we have the holes actually lined up there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take one of these screws and see if I can get it to go in the hole, just as a demonstration to show you what we're talking about here. I think that's a 3 millimeter screw, and I just happen to have a 3 with me here. And I'm going to run that down, keeping the other holes kind of aligned. There we go, just to tighten it up. Okay, so now this is what we're talking about as far as the interference. The diameter, actually, you can see, you can't see the whole round circle of those 70 millimeter holes there. Okay, they got a little bit of interference there. Okay, so that means when you put a screw in this way from this side, you've got that much 5 millimeters or so of space for screwing it in, and you can't go out because this is going to hit it. Okay, so that's just a matter of choosing your mounting screws properly, or adding washers to your mounting screws. I think when I actually mounted this up, it was only like 1 millimeter too far for the screws I had, and I put another washer in and problem solved, right? A 1 millimeter washer, and now it's flush and everything's good to go. So yeah, it's, again, there's some activity on the forums about this, but like I said, it doesn't surprise me that we have to maybe use a different screw and maybe use an extra washer to get something mounted on these direct drive wheel solutions, because there's no one size fits all anyway, as far as, you know, the different button plates and wheels and everything that everybody uses. Right. So just wanted to show you guys that so you're aware of that. And again, usually a couple of washers resolves that issue. Now, we also have, and this is not the Granite Devices or Simucube stuff. This is actually from Martin Asher SQR adapter. Very clever little adapter here. You can use this 2 ways. We can actually take this flat part right here, we'll go ahead and get the wheel over here, and mount it to the 70 millimeter pattern on our wheel. Now, regardless if it, on this wheel, it's actually machined into the back plate, but we, you know, a lot of wheels we have screws going all the way through, and then we have nuts on the other side, and that will work here too, if you need to do that. But yeah, this matches up very nicely with the 70 millimeter pattern here, even though I'm kind of goofy with it right now, but it does, trust me. If you saw the review on this wheel, you know that. Right, so you can mount it flat like that if that's what you need to do, and then we can come in with our spacer, right? And that's the way I actually was going to use it. Put the spacer on, and it has the same 4 pattern holes here that this piece does, right? So this obviously is going to go on top of it eventually. Let's go ahead and pull this screw out while I'm talking about it, so it doesn't mess things up for us. We'll go ahead and put this guy aside. So this goes on like this, right? And so this would go on top of that, and we could mount that right there. All right, so we'd have this assembly once we're done, with 4 bolts going into the 4-bolt pattern that is identical to the 4-bolt pattern we had on this adapter, right? So once that's on there, then we can actually put, you can see on this side of the adapter, and it's cool the way they actually recessed all this, that the bolts won't obviously interfere with anything. We have another 4-hole pattern that is threaded on this spacer, okay? So then we come back and we match up our 4-hole pattern for this and bolt that onto there. So we've actually got 4 bolts in here, we've got 4 bolts in there, then we've got 6 bolts on this holding it to the wheel. So that's how we're going to do it. And we'll take a look at that once it's all done. But that's cool that you have an adapter here. Now, that's not the only thing this adapter will do. Well, also, in case you don't want to use this system, you have your own system, like a Q1R or some other system, and you don't want to use, because you're heavily vested, like me, in the Q1R quick releases. Well, this allows us to come back. Let me just turn this right side up here. And that's another reason why I kept the cap off. You can just pull the 3 bolts out of this cap, and guess what's on the other side of this adapter? you can see the same 3-hole pattern here. So you could actually just take it and bolt it directly to the end of this shaft, or to the end of the adapter here that's on the motor, right? This little beauty ring thing. So once we have that, then we have our 70mm pattern. I can mount a quick release with a 70mm pattern on this, right? So then I have my motor side quick release, and then my other quick releases like my Q1R are gonna fit right onto that, and I'm done. That's just gonna be my quick release. I'm not gonna use the Simucube quick release, the SQR as they call it. So very cool adapter that you can buy from Martin Asher if you need to do that. That's an easy way to get this thing to work. And this actually has, I didn't really check out the pattern here, but I don't think any of this stuff lines up for this, because this adapter wasn't made to do that. Actually, I can do it here easier and see if there's anything, but yeah, no, there's nothing there for that. There are some holes that line up, but yeah. So this is what you need if you want to mount your own quick release system to your Simucube 2 wheel. Very cool. Anything else we want to talk about on the quick release system? I think it pretty much explains it. So what we'll do next is I'm going to talk very briefly about the e-stop and how I mounted mine. The e-stop, the device that may one day save your life. All right. First off, we've already looked at this in the closer look, and it's a really nice unit, really nicely done. Got some little dirt on it there, try to keep things clean for you guys, but very nicely done unit. And again, yeah, we got to mount this though, and of course it's just as easy as putting a screw through this and maybe a T-nut or something else, or you're screwing it to a piece of wood, who knows. But yeah, this is how I ended up mounting this, and it's going to be right where I need it to be, so I can actually use my leg to whack this thing, and yeah, smash, right? Just when I need it the most. Plus, it also, you can push this down, it keeps it from beeping at you, because there's a lot of beeps and warnings on this system. Right. So what I ended up doing here, and you'll see this once we have the motor mounted, you'll see how I have this mounted and working. But what I ended up doing was taking a 1/8 inch piece of aluminum plate, just cut out a little long square, drill some big holes in each end like that, and then I drilled some small holes right here and actually threaded those for M4 or 4mm screws. And you need some rather long ones, and these are the ones I used to get through and actually screw this on here. So these are, I believe, 30, 35. Let's see what we got here. 25. Probably 25. Yeah. So these are 25mm right there length. So they'll allow me to go through the housing all the way, and you can see I'm still sticking out a bit. And then that'll allow me to go ahead and screw this in. Let's go ahead and run one of these in just to see what it looks like. Get the other one kind of lined up. Right. So now that I have that lined up. Right. And we can see the other hole, well, is going through there. See it through there? So I'll put the other bolt or screw through there, obviously. And then I can use some M8 bolts here that I have plenty of T-nuts for my 40 series P1 rig. And yeah, just bolt it in the channel and you're done. And there you go. And of course we can raise it up and down or move it from channel to channel, depending on where we need to have this puppy located at, right? So pretty simple, easy way to get it mounted. If you have some extra aluminum laying around, just drill some holes, throw some taps in it, and you are done. Right, just want to show you that, and you will see this on my rig again once I have it mounted up there and the wheel mounted. You know, I'm just going to show you guys the complete package once we have the wheelbase and this stuff mounted up. So what we'll do next is we'll actually we'll go ahead and mount everything. As far as I'll mount this motor to the P1 rig, or not the rig, but actually the 15mm plate, the front mounting plate that we use. And then we'll go ahead and mount this up, and yeah, then we'll look at the wheel going on and all that kind of stuff next. Okay, we've got the motor mounted to our 15mm thick plate. It's going to be a nice solid mount for this motor. And yeah, again, I really like the way that they have the threads in the flange on this motor, so it's much easier to, yeah, instead of having to run a bolt on the back of this, like typically what I'll have to do on just about every other servo I've ever mounted. But yeah, hey, look, no bolts. Pretty cool, pretty slick. Yeah, makes it a little bit easier. Not that it's real difficult the other way, but still it just makes it a little easier and a little simpler to actually get this mounted. We're going to take our little beauty covers, which are these little plastic nut things I've had forever. And just kind of slide them on there, make it look even slicker, right? Okay, so all we got to do now is go over to the rig, get this all bolted on, and then when we come back, we'll take a look and see what it looks like. All right, we've got the quick release mounted now, or the quick release sections, that are the wheel sections, the SQR from Martin Asher Racing. Very neatly done there. And yeah, and you can still see that there is some, if we had, you know, you can see that the bolts there are kind of hidden a little bit underneath this spacer, like we saw on the other adapter that comes with the actual wheel system or wheelbase. So yeah, this is all very solid. I've got a lot of confidence. Is very high that this is going to give us no play at all, which means more force feedback cues coming to our hands. Right, so what we'll do now is go ahead and take this over to the rig. We've already got the wheelbase mounted, and put this puppy on and see what it looks like. Now we have the motor mounted to the SimLab P1 15mm front mounting bracket, a very solid mount in its own right. And yeah, the motor looks good there. I really like that aluminum accent line. It's really growing on me. When I first saw it, I wasn't too sure about it, but yeah, I really like it, I think. Right, so solidly mounted, and we also have, just so we can go down and take a quick look at it, the e-brake is mounted with that aluminum plate that I drilled and tapped some holes into. So that's sitting there nice and pretty. And we could actually get some, I just don't have any on hand yet, some of the roll-end T-nuts that are 4mm threaded, and then we wouldn't see the bracket anymore, just be the T-nuts. And I'll probably do that later on when I have a chance to come across some. Blue light is on the power button because we have it powered up, and if you can see, I have the torque turned off. The button is pressed. Right, that's to keep it from beeping and annoying me, because it beeps every few minutes or so if you don't do that, if you leave it on. And that's why, coming around the back here, we can see the blue and red LEDs flashing, because it's on, but the torque is disengaged because the e-brake is engaged. Right, so we've got our two power connectors, and of course the USB, trying to give you guys a look at it there, and then the other one, of course, is the e-stop cable. So we got 4 cables coming back, and obviously terrible cable management here by me, but I change the stuff around so much, as you guys know. It's a lost cause for me to try to manage my cables and make them look pretty. Got some Velcro wraps over here, keeping everything out of the way of these tops of these wave pedals. And we'll just scoot around the back here and see how I've got these power supplies sitting here. And yeah, they're just sitting here on top of my cart. I may do something different later on. And you can see that there's been a concern on the forums. Some guys have said that they're concerned about the length of the wire coming off this power supply. And yeah, if you have something, you have to mount them further away from your cockpit than I do, then you might have an issue. But I'm not having any issues here. I got plenty of reach to get to the motor. So again, it depends on what you have behind your rig, is how much room you're going to need for those. Right. So anything else we want to talk about here? I think that's it. What we'll do now is, yeah, let's go ahead and get our wheel and get it mounted using their quick release system and see how that looks. All right, let's go ahead and mount up this Asher wireless wheel. And again, it's pretty easy. Just obviously just drop it down on there, rotate it to where we can get to the hole for the pin, and we just shove the pin in there, drive it home, and there you go. And that is tight, ladies and gentlemen. That is a very, very tight. Of course, it's a stiff wheel right here. If you saw the review on this Asher racing wheel, this is, like I said before, probably one of the stiffest wheels I've ever laid my hands on. It's very stiff. So yeah, there we go. Simple as that. You want to switch out a wheel, pull your pin, and this is actually in game. You can do this with this wireless system, is pull the wheel off, put another wheel off that has the wireless connection. Let's say I already have it auto connected in the software or checked for auto connection, and just slap the other wheel on there, and there we go. And now I can actually use the other wheel while the game's still going. Now, I haven't had a chance to actually try that, but that is what I've been told by the guys at Granite Devices, that that is a capability of this system. So very cool. Right, so now what we got to do is, yeah, let's get in, and what we'll do, I think, is talk about the software, the TrueDrive software, before we actually do any driving, and yeah, we'll just get to the software part next. So now we're going to do a brief overview of the Simucube 2 True Drive software or application we're going to use to control all of these SC2 wheelbases. Right. This is not going to be an in-depth tuning session because that takes way too much time. And yeah, I'm just going to go over this briefly, some of the points I think that you guys might want to know. And yeah, we'll do a live tuning session sometime later in a separate video where I can spend enough time in a certain game. Like we'll just do one for iRacing and run a couple of cars, a couple of different tracks, and go through some of the tuning options and see what we get as a result. Right. So what I'm going to do now is you can see that obviously I'm disconnected. Now this, first off, is version 1.0.3 of this software. So it might be different by the time you see this video because they're always, obviously, especially with a new system like this, they're going to be tweaking and changing things in the firmwares as they go along. But this is what we have to work with today. So operating mode, obviously, we're disconnected. Now I'm going to connect this, and there's two ways you can power the system up. There's a button on the back. You can just turn it to the on position, and it will power up. Or you can use the remote e-stop system that they have, because remember, if you saw the closer look, you know that there is a power switch on that e-stop. Very cool that we can remotely power the switch. You have to have, or rather the motor, you have to have the power switch on the back of the motor in the off position for this to work. And I'm not sure why they did it that way, but that's the way it works. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and you see I'm going to go ahead and show you the e-stop button, and it's out now. It's not engaged. And you could actually see that up here, the e-stop motor status is unknown because we don't have anything turned on. What I'm going to do is go ahead over to the power button and turn that on. And when I turn that on, a blue LED is going to show, and then I'm going to show you the back of the motor itself, and you'll see a blue LED come on, and then you'll see a green LED, another blue LED, and we should hear some beeps. And there they are. And now it should change to operational. And there we go. Now we're operational, and our profile is an F48 GT3 at Sebring, which is my default profile, and you can make that anything you want, of course. E-stop is released, so we're ready to go, except for high torque mode is disabled. So every time you start this app, you're going to have to enable high torque mode. So we go in there to the button here. It's right on the, remember, we're on the actual overview tab here. Go up here, it's moving around on me. See, it says overview. And we'll enable high torque mode, and here comes the lawyer speak disclaimer. And you can slide this all the way over like this, or you can just push on the little side button here and it'll scroll over to you. Then this will come open and active, and then we'll click that and it should give us some beeps. And there's the beeps. So now we have high torque mode is enabled. Right, so these are the first things you do when you start this application up and your motor up. Now you can see down here, we have a wheel that is superimposed, or not imposed, but just showing us a Martin Asher wireless F28 SC wheel, because that's what I'm using. You can actually put any picture you want to, I believe, using the .png extension, and it will show up in this application if you put the picture in the same folder where this application executable is. Right, so it's kind of cool. We can actually see what kind of wheel we're running. And wheel position, you can see it's -1, 2. I already have this centered, and it's real neat that first thing you might want to do is, obviously, if you put a new wheel on, is reset the center based on the location or the orientation of your quick release system. So you just click that, and it's very easy. And I think most people are just going to come down here and set permanent wheel center real quick. And you click that, and then you leave it alone. I'm actually going to do that because I'm actually centered pretty much anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and set it up and tell it to set the permanent wheel center. So let's do that. And you can't touch the wheel when you do this, by the way. And let it do its thing. And see it just click to 0? That means it's ready to go. Now I can touch the wheel again and move it around. So everything's good. Right. And we'll come back to this page in just a second when we attach the wireless wheel. Analog inputs, not using that because I don't have any. And buttons 1 through 128. We can actually run 128 different inputs on this system. Very impressive. And these little circles here are dots, or will light up when we actually use a shifter or a button. We can't see that right now because the wheel's not connected. With that being said, let's go connect this puppy. Now this is a Martin Asher. We go to the next tab, which is wireless wheels for Simucube. Click on that, and you can see it's already searching or scanning for a Bluetooth device. I don't have the wheel on, so it doesn't see anything. I'm also going to uncheck that because I had it checked before. And that's connect automatically. Right. So you can actually scan for new devices, stop scan, typical of most Bluetooth apps that we have, that we can actually do things as far as scan or not scan and disconnect or connect. But I'm going to go ahead now and turn on the Asher wireless wheel, and that is the button in the back. If you saw the review on the Martin Asher F28 SC wheel, you know all about that. So I'm just going to turn it on, and we should see it pop up. So let's see. There it is. All right, so it popped up, and now we see it has located or has identified the Asher Racing F28 wheel. We got a MAC address and a signal strength. No connection and no battery indicator because we're not connected yet. Now, it says up here only devices that are announcing can be found when scanning. So you hold shifter paddles for 1 second to start announcing. Well, on the Asher wheel, it starts announcing when you turn the power on. So you don't do that. You don't need to do that. But all you have to do is highlight the Asher Racing wheel. I'm going to click on it. You see it stays orange now. I guess that's an orange. Then you go down here and just say, okay, connect. And it should give us a connection and battery indication once it's connected. So let's see. Connect device. Okay, it didn't connect there. Maybe I gotta... Let me push the shifters in. So it did. It's strange that with this, and it's good that it did that, because before, you know, it does it, it's kind of intermittent here when it does. I can hit the highlight it and then tell it connect, and it connects. Sometimes I have to hold the shifters down. I'm not sure why what the difference is. Maybe the wheel was on long enough to where it stopped broadcasting to say battery, I'm thinking. And then once I held the shifters in, like it says to up here, then it connected. So if it doesn't connect, just pull your shifters in. It should be good to go. But most of the time I do it so quick, I'm not talking about it in the video, obviously, that it just connects and I don't have that issue. Right. Now, I'm also going to come down here and say connect automatically to pair devices and save my settings. The reason I'm doing that is now I won't have any issues connecting. As long as the wheel is on, once you start the app, it'll connect automatically to the paired device, just like an application in your car does, you know, same kind of thing. So we're connected, everything looks good. We got our battery voltage indicator. I'm going to go back up here to the overview tab real quick, just to show you we have some more information now under our reset center button. And that is the condition of our wireless connection. It's the Acer Racing F28. Battery is at 3.55 and connection strength is currently wavering between 42 and 48. Yeah, so up and down. Yeah. Okay, oh, there's 51. So this is typical with a wireless connection. You will have some variables in the strength as, you know, if things are happening in the environment that you are in. And you can see I'm actually turning the wheel here, and I'm getting different strength indicators. I can move it all the way around. You can see down to 30, 28 down there, 25, 20. So it looks like 20 was the lowest I got. There's 17 actually. So if we go back to the center position I was in before, we should be back in the 48s, and we are in 51. So that's, again, just an indication that the antenna on the back of this wheel is moving in relation to the antenna on the back of the wheelbase. So I never had any dropouts. If you saw the review on this wheel, I was talking about that. I never had any missed shifts or missed button presses or dropouts, even though I saw my signal strength go down to like 17%. And maybe it's because there's such close proximity of the wheel and the wheelbase. I don't know. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time. So that gives us the indication of what our wireless connection is. Moving on to, probably we're going to spend most of our time is over here in the, and they call this, I'll highlight over it, profiles. So here's where we manage our profiles in the top part. Very cool right here. I really like this. And I just, one of those things that impressed me right away. It's so easy to do everything you want to do. There's no, oh, how do I do this? How to do that? It's all right here. If you want to change your configuration, obviously I got a few of them in here. I got an 80%, a 90%, and I got this one over here. I don't know what that was, something I was playing with. But my default one is the 488 GT3 Sebring. So that's the one I'm using default. I can actually change it to, let's say, the 80%. And you can see my strength just changed to 80%. And my lock-to-lock changed. And yeah, that's easy enough to change in between them. And as far as I know, you do not have to do the save settings. It just changes it. And because I've never done the save settings, changing between profiles in-game, and it always worked. Right. So if we want to add one, then we go in and say, okay, I'm going to add a profile. But typically that takes it from default. And what I usually, and that's a good way to go to a default, but I usually just use the copy. So if I wanted to copy this and change it to like a different car, I would just hit copy, and you see now I have a copied profile. And whatever car I want to actually use this in, I would just grab that and then type it in like I normally would, and then it would name myself a new profile. And then I could go in and change all this other stuff to match the profile I wanted to. But I would do a copy because I'm typically pretty close in the general area on cars and tracks. And yeah, starting from scratch can make you go through steps that you've already done that you don't want to repeat. But anyway, copy's a very powerful tool. But of course, we can also add, delete, so forth and so on. Right. So I'm going to go back to my 488 profile and yeah, and go to, actually, I think it's got copied profile in there. Let me, sometimes it won't change to one profile. Let's go to the 90%. See, it changed to 90%, and that put me at 100%, which is really not 100%, 90% because I changed it before. And now we're back to that. Sometimes you have to click on it, another one, and then go back to that one. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it's probably something they're going to tweak out later on. Right. So now we know how to do all this stuff here. It's very easy to do these. Rearrange. It'll actually bring them all up, and you can drag them around to where you want them. Like I said, this is a very powerful management tool here. I really like this. Right. Steering range, obviously, we can change that to whatever degrees we need, 720, 900, 540, wherever the case may be. Overall strength, obviously, that's self-explanatory. I'm at 100%, which I normally add them 100%, and I'll tune it in-game from that usually to make it manageable so I don't have full force the whole time. What's cool about these things, these scroll bars here, or these settings bars, whatever you want to call them, you can actually just use your mouse wheel. See, I'm just using my mouse wheel here, moving it around. So very cool. Now, it does jump in large increments. Well, it might be considered large. But you can also grab it and drag it and do less increments. See, there's 99, 98. So if you want to fine-tune, you're still going to have to drag it. Can be a little finicky, but it's nothing against this application because most applications are like that with sliders. Right. So let's go down to constantly operating filters. And this is where you'll do most of your tuning. And yeah, we've got the reconstruction filter, which is some people like minimal. Basically, the way to explain this is, oh, by the way, that beep there, let me stop for 1 second, is because I don't have the e-stop on and the motor is alive. I haven't turned it off. So it's just letting you know that motor's still active, be careful, so forth and so on. I'm going to stop that beeping by reaching down to my Simucube emergency stop, and I'm going to press the button, and now it will not do that anymore. And you can see up here, my e-stop is pressed, changed up there to pressed from not being pressed. Right, back to what we were talking about. Reconstruction filter. I usually run this 5, 3, 2 maybe, depending on the car and the track. This is all subjective, by the way, before we even get into this. And yeah, you're going to have to play with this stuff. Typically what I'll do is I'll find a reconstruction filter if I have a new car and a new track. And I'll find the reconstruction filter that lets me go down a straight and have some oscillation in the wheel with my hands off of it. Not enough oscillation that it just amplifies and keeps getting worse and worse, but just enough for it to be moving. And then I'll come down and go down to the other filters, which is dampening, friction, inertia, and then tune it to where I like the feel. Typically, that's how I'll go about it. Now, that doesn't always work, again, and this is subjective. And, there's plenty of different ways to do this. And there's a lot of different ones. Some people use 8. Some people just turn the thing off, which is really, really, really active. And even 1, obviously, minimum is very fast and very active. So it depends on your personal taste and what you want, but usually that's what I do. I'll hit this first to find which one I like for the car and track. And torque bandwidth limit, typically most guys will go down here and just pick unlimited. So whatever the game's putting out, that's what we'll get. So you can do unlimited or you can do 1,000, which was the default. I've been running on 1,000 without any issues, but again, I've had this for weeks and I'm still messing around with this, trying to get a handle on things or be comfortable with it. There's a lot of settings here. All right, so back to the dampening, friction, and inertia. This is where you'll fine tune the way you want the wheel to feel. And actually dampening is pretty self-explanatory. It dampens or dulls the force feedback impacts. Friction, there's more force to actually turn the wheel. And inertia is when you're turning the wheel, it just gives you a feeling of the wheel still turning as you're turning it. So, or a heavier wheel, like once you get it, my Cole Morgan, once I start pushing that thing, it has its own hardware inertia that kind of keeps it going. So you can adjust all this, of course. Static force reduction. All right, this is kind of the way it was explained to me is a high-pass filter. It's if there's a long corner with constant torque, this is where we would actually go in and turn this down so I have less torque in the turn only, right? If I'm in a curve or a corner, so that if I'm having a lot of downforce in a long corner, if I was in the DW18 or something like that, or DW12, lots of downforce, it can be pretty brutal going through long turns. This will actually reduce by what you set it at the amount of percentage of the torque that you're getting from the wheel in the corner only. When you go on the straight, everything's back to normal and you get full force again. This just helps you have a lot of force on the wheel, but helps you in the corners not get wore out as much. At least that's my take on it. Right. And it actually does work. I did actually drive that, and I was in the DW18 and going on some, I forget which the long corners were, so I forget the track it was. But anyway, it did work. Once I changed that, it was easier in the corners and still felt the same going down the straights. But that's all it does, by the way, is the constant torque in the corner. Any bumps, any curbing, any of that stuff still is full force wherever you have that set at. Will come through, so it doesn't affect any of that. Kind of a cool little deal there, I think. And slew rate limit, Newton meters, milliseconds. That is how fast the torque level of the wheel can change. You can play with this too. Its default is off, but you can, I know some people are running it down to 0.1s, 0.2s, even 1 point something, depending on what kind of setup you have as far as, you know, the car and so forth. Off is the default. And yeah, that's just, again, something you have to play with and get used to how it feels when you change this. Right. So you can change the sluggishness, or you can actually, it's kind of like a dampener, really, to me. I mean, when I was using it, I was thinking, well, this is kind of like dampening. So we can use, but we can, again, tune things a little bit differently, leaving our dampening strength to what we had it. Okay, I'm trying to move along quick here because I don't want this to be a huge, long segment here because there's just so much that you can do here. Ultra low latency mode, or LL mode, a lot of people are calling this. And that tries to, what they're telling me, it tries to guess what the wheel's doing next. If you're running very low friction and dampening, adding more of this latency filter will result in being able to run in, say, iRacing without the wheel going crazy in oscillation mode. So again, it seems to me that if I use this and I'm getting oscillations, I can actually tune those oscillations out a bit with this. So yeah, that's, I played with it and it does do that, but you know, dampening does the same thing, but this does it in a different way is what I'm told. It's just a different type of filter, a little bit different the way it filters the frequency. Right. So we'll also have, moving on here, I'm trying to keep this moving, like I said, peaking and notch filters. That's a whole nother discussion, is, you know, and a lot of the people play with these, and there's a lot of things we can do. We can actually go up to the different center frequency we are looking at, and then we go down to how much attenuation we want to apply, and that's the notch filter at what frequency. And you really have to play around with that. And the Q filter is, you know, how aggressively it does it, is from what I understand. Anyway, I usually leave that on filter disabled unless I have a problem I'm trying to chase. Right, so there it is. Now we do have this direct input fine tuning, but that's typically for games that use canned direct input effects, I'm told. So this is where we can actually tune those canned effects to where maybe we can turn them down if we don't like them, they're too rough, or something like a Truck Simulator 2 titles. All that's canned from what I'm told. And you can actually mess around with these sliders and try to get it to feel a little bit less canned. Right, so there's our configuration for our controls. And there's a lot you can do. There's really not that many of them, depending on what you're looking at. I mean, if you look at like Sim Commander, there's a ton of stuff in that. That'll really drive you crazy. This is a lot less than that, and yeah, I like the look of this. I think it's pretty intuitive. And again, you need to go, I'm going to put links, by the way, in the description of this video for the Granite Devices GitHub page for their firmware updates for the Simucube tube, also for, obviously, the discussion for Simucube 2, and also I'm going to put in a link for the blog. There's actually a blog where it describes and tries to explain some of this stuff there too. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research to get up to date. And of course they may change this stuff a little bit, tweak it as they go along. So that might change in the future. So moving on, let's go. We got 2 tabs to go. General information here, and that's what this tab is for, hardware settings. And that just tells you the basic stuff, the firmware you're running. The current is obviously 100%, it's 22.8 amps max. Bump stop, this is where you can set it to 20% or 100%, like you're hitting a brick wall when you hit your bump stop. Default is 20, and again, that's very subjective on what you want to do with that. The angle of the bump stop, how steeply it's applied as it nears the bump stop, so you can have it abrupt. You can actually go down to 5%, 0 or 0 degrees or 5 degrees, or actually 1 degree. Okay, 1's the minimum, which makes sense. 0 degrees is no degrees. But it's default at 10 degrees, depending on what you want. Dampening effect, this does not work correctly in this version. It actually says this. So don't worry about that one. Audible notifications. Here we can turn off our audible notifications, like when the app starts, that kind of thing. Torque clipping notification. That is cool. It actually works. It's audible notification when your saturation is detected in a game. So if I'm clipping, I'll get a beep from my motor now, instead of having to look up and watch a scrolling bar hit the red or go to yellow and then red, so forth and so on. It'll actually beep, and then I'll know I need to turn down the effects in game to stop that clipping. So it's a very cool little tool here that's hidden over here in the, again, general information, our hardware settings. So yeah, that's something you definitely want to go in and check if it's not checked already. It might be, I think it's checked by default though. All right, desktop centering spring, centering strength, that's 20%. Again, that's something to do with the centering spring. I don't know why it says desktop centering spring, but anyway, it's about the centering forces of the wheel. If you turn the wheel and then it wants to come back to center, how much of that spring effect you have. But we also have that in, well, actually we don't have that in the other settings, but I was a little curious why they put it here. I thought they would put that in the regular profiles working tab, but they might do that later, I don't know. Hands-off detection sensitivity controls how sensitive your device when you go into safe torque mode automatically. High torque mode is resumed automatically on hands-on. So if you don't move this for a while and it's beeping at you, eventually it's going to, it's off, actually it's off right now. If you have this on, low, and you can actually go to low, medium, and high. If you have it off, then you'll never have to worry about that, which I do. Most power users will do that. There's no sense. I don't want it ever to turn the high torque mode off unless something, you know, I'll do that with the emergency stop if I need to. Right, USB suspend support. I usually don't mess with any of this stuff, and I turn all that junk off on my BIOS in my PC, on my computer, on its motherboard also. Configure analog inputs. We don't have any, but it will let you do that. And it says configuration is only available when Simucube operating mode is operational. Okay, so I'm going to take this, let's see if that changes when I take off the e-stop. And yeah, it says the same thing. Okay, if we click on that, it brings up this. And that's pretty complicated looking stuff where you can invert things as far as your analog controls. I'm not messing with that because I don't have any analog controls on this wheel. Right, so there we have it. That was the last screen. No, one more. Here we go. And this is, again, this is basic information and it just tells you what you have. Obviously, I'm running the Pro, revision 1. The firmware is 1.0.3, and the servo drive is on 10800. Right. Now, you can click here for updates for your firmware. Excuse me. Get a little frog in my throat there. So, but if you click this, I'll do that just to show you. It goes to Simucube firmware releases, but it goes to the Simucube 1, or I guess what we're calling it now 1, and this is not the Simucube 2, but there is a link here that says looking for the Simucube 2 files. They're here. So you click on that and it takes you to where I'll have a link in my description. We'll click on that and that takes us over. Here we are, the Simucube 2 true drive releases. And here we are, the latest one being 103. And you can download it here as a zip file. Very cool that we can actually go get our updates right from this app, right? Instead of going to a browser and having to do it that way. Right, what else we need to know here? UI language, there's no drop down right there. This requires a restart if you set the language, but there's nothing in there right now. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to be changed a little bit as we go along, I'm sure, by Granite Devices team. Right, reset the device state. This is where you can reset the memory and everything. Just take it from, in other words, something crashed, something is left running, something's messed up with your wheel or your wheelbase. You can just reset it right here. And we can download debug event logs and normal event state changes, so forth. In other words, we can log everything that's going on with the wheel, and you may need that for troubleshooting sometime. Right, so there we have it. As you can see, I took the emergency stop off. It's beeping at me again. I think, what was that? It must have been about 2 or 3 minutes. Right, so there it is, the overview of the software. Now, I'm actually going to go into iRacing, Assetto Corsa, probably Project Cars, and maybe Race Room, just a few different games, and I'm going to do some video of me actually running those games. And I will put up some configuration information when I'm running those games, just in case you guys want to try it. But again, that is such a rather subjective subject that you may not like what I have. And then, of course, I might not like what you have. But that's just the way it is. But I will do that because I get asked a lot, what were you running? But yeah, I'll go ahead and put those settings up when I'm in those videos. But right now, that's it for the Simucube 2 True Drive software overview. And again, I want to do independent videos on actual live tuning sessions. Well, not live, but me running the car and showing what I'm doing in my tuning session. And to get down into the nitty-gritty what these filters are doing. So what we'll do next is, let's get in this thing and just drive. So the first driving segment, we're going to use iRacing in the Ferrari 488 GT3. And I really like the motor that they've come up with here for these SC2, at least for the Pro. It feels really good. I can notice a difference between the midge motors I was using before in the SC1 platform. It's smoother. The torque delivery seems to be a little smoother. But anyway, there's so many filters we can play with here, and besides the usual, reconstruction filter, the dampening, the friction, and the inertia, the biggest one was the static force reduction filter, and that was reducing torque in the corners. And you had to be careful with this, though. If you get too much of it, then it just doesn't feel natural. And not only that, but other things tend to creep in the corners where normally they weren't there when you had the torque. So here are the settings for both the True Drive and for in iRacing the game itself. So next up is Assetto Corsa, and this is typically one that feels kind of vague to me when I was using the older Simucube 2 system, and even the AccuForce and even the Bodner. It seemed just a little vague, but I was able to actually dial into where I thought I could feel just a little bit more road surface than normal. And of course that's all subjective, like all this stuff as far as settings go. But I thought I could get up. I found a happy place here with Assetto Corsa that I normally wasn't able to find, and I think that's because obviously we have more things to adjust with the SC2 wheels. Although I understand that some of these filters are going to be available to the SC1 platforms with a firmware update, so we'll see how that pans out. But I was actually pretty happy with racing around here in Assetto Corsa more than I usually am. So mission accomplished as far as that's concerned. And I'm going to go ahead and show you my settings here for True Drive, and of course for the actual in-game settings, which is pretty much average and default. I didn't mess with that too much. So the last game is Project Cars 2, and actually this is the one that surprised me the most. I was able to get a feeling dialed in where I could actually feel like I could push the car hard and maintain some sort of feeling of control of what it was actually doing to allow me to push hard, where I really have never been able to do that with Project Cars. And that's really, like I said, I was a little bit surprised here. This is not my go-to game for race car simulations, because it's more of a game-ish type thing, but it's still entertaining and a lot of fun. And there's a lot of cool things you can do in Project Cars 2. That's one of the reasons I still have it and I drive it. So I'm glad that these extra filters are in here, because I was able to come up with something. Of course, again, this is subjective. It's all, you may like it, you may not like it, but I am going to post my TD settings in here. The in-game settings here for Project Cars 2 was all default except for the force. I think I had that at 90% instead of 100. Final thoughts on the SC2 Pro wheelbase from the guys at Simucube. What was once a complex do-it-yourself DD wheel system has come a long way in just 4 years. It's been fun watching how the direct drive force feedback wheel systems have evolved. And the SC2 wheelbases are the next logical step in the ongoing DD wheel revolution, I think. The guys at Simucube have certainly raised the bar with this new family of wheelbases, with everything except the power supplies contained within the wheelbase itself. Compared to the SC1 solution, it's a noticeably smaller package, but at the same time brings more and faster processing power to the table, enabling the use of newer filters that need that power to do their job. The True Drive software is a rather intuitive and easy-to-use app, I think, with just enough tuning options to allow tweaking the wheelbase to one's own taste for most people, but still remaining simple enough not to frustrate or intimidate people that are new to the whole direct drive force feedback concept. And I am told the Simucube team is working on an even simpler to use user interface for those who just want to adjust some sliders and get on with their driving fun. Speaking of driving fun, I certainly had my fair share during this review. The newly developed motor used in the SC2 Pro was a treat to use. I thought it was noticeably smoother than the midge motors I was using before. So, a great result here in achieving what they set out to do. I was able to get some games to feel the best I have to date with the new Simucube solution. Still, there were other games that continue to frustrate, which has nothing to do with the Simucube hardware and everything to do with some game developers still not properly supporting DD wheels in general. I do like the new SQR quick release solution that they've come up with here. It's a very solid physical connection with no perceivable flex. I had an SC2 compatible wireless wheel on hand to test the wireless feature. They connected to each other without any issues. While using it, I never experienced any missed shifts or missed button presses. I think the way Martin Asher utilizes a stubby antenna on back of his wheel has something to do with this, which brings me to one thing I would like to see changed on the SC2 wheelbases. I think it would be great if they would add the same sort of antenna to the back of the wheelbases instead of the current plastic window solution they are using now. Wireless signals can be a tricky thing at times. Also, using two power supplies to run the SC2 Pro can present some challenges to the user. You will need to make sure you have the room and they are close enough to the motor, as the cables that go between the motor and the power supply come in at around 1 meter long. Another piece that I really liked in this kit, which kind of surprised me, was the e-stop assembly. With the front plate made of metal and the very clever power switch integration, it is a pleasure to use. You know, overall, I think this is a clear winner for the team at the Simucube, and the SC2 Pro is just something that I really have enjoyed using. You can tell they put a lot of time and effort into this result, and I think it has really paid off for them. Still, I can't help but cast a longing look at the very Cole Morganish looking SC2 Ultimate wheelbase. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.